throw them a bar mitzvah party where all of the work is all done by the Yozma youth group, where the waiters are the grade 6 kids from the Yozma school, where it's their whole community is part of embracing and celebrating these people and their abilities. It was really just a wonderful, meaningful thing to see. I'm going to come back to him in a moment. The two people leaning over the Torah, this picture doesn't happen to have Rabbi Dolgin in it, although he was there. That's on the left of the Torah as we look at it. That's Rabbi Philip Nadel. I'm going to talk about him as part of a story in a minute. And on the right, David is going to start, as he teaches at Yozma School, he's starting his Israeli rabbinic studies next year. He grew up Haredi. And outside of Modi'in, and now teaches at a Reform school, and is now going to be studying to be a Reform rabbi. On Yom, again, Jewish stories. What is Yom Yerushalayim? That's the forgotten Yom, right? Jerusalem Day is the day where we mark the unification of Jerusalem. And the Jewish presence in Jerusalem since the Six-Day War, when Jerusalem came back into Jewish hands. What else is Yom Yerushalayim in Israel? It is the day where, in addition to celebrating and marking Jerusalem, it is the day where Israel's Jewish Ethiopian community marks and remembers all those people who were lost on the way to Israel, or who lived in Ethiopia, dreamt of coming to Jerusalem, and never made it. So it's a national day for Israel's Ethiopian community. This is an amazing woman who was leading the program. That was a partnership program in the Israeli city of Gedera, which is south of Tel Aviv, which is a partnership program between the Ethiopian Community Organization and Gedera's Reform Congregation. And to see the stories and the poems and the songs that were shared of the Israeli Ethiopian community was again a reminder about stories that we don't hear enough of, and stories that we don't have the chance to tell. And that I hope that we'll find new ways to celebrate and to mark and to share in with our community. And lots more to tell, but we don't have, we have just tonight, not all week. Now, I mentioned Rabbi Nadel, who was to the left of the Torah, leaning over the Torah. Right? This is Burhani. Burhani lives in Tel Aviv. He's a Christian. He's originally from Eritrea. And if you've heard talk about the asylum seekers in Israel, he is one of them. Now, why am I standing with Burhani? Because Burhani has been in Israel since he managed to escape from the Eritrean army, which he was forced into at the age of 16. And ended up through a long process of trying, walking out. The whole story I can tell you. He was 16, 17 years old at this time, and tried to get to Europe, etc. Ended up in Israel, where before they built the fence down at the south. He's one of the many thousands, the tens of thousands of African asylum seekers in Israel, and would be more than happy to find a different place to live, since he's not Jewish and Israel won't give him permanent status to live there, which is a complicated political thing and to some degree is understandable. The way it's happened, and I'll talk about it at a political gathering, but eventually these numbers are challenging numbers. Burhani found himself, the response of him coming across the border was he was dropped off by the Israeli Border Patrol at the Tel Aviv bus station with no money, nowhere to go, and no Hebrew language skills of any kind. Berhani now speaks fluent Hebrew, fluent English, and when there was an opportunity potentially for him to get out to go to Holland, he learned Dutch. And in fact passed the government language proficiency requirements for Holland in Dutch for somebody whose high school years involved getting dragged against his will into the Eritrean army. He's an amazing young man. He has temporary, as all the asylum seekers do, he has status in Israel that is temporary. He has no permanent status. He has to renew his status by going to the Ministry of the Interior every month. If he could have permanent status, he has nothing against Israel and would be happy to stay. He just really wants somewhere to be, where he has permanent status. He's an amazing, and during this time has gone from a man at a bus station who knew no one and could talk to no one until he found someone who was also from Eritrea who he could say a word to somebody where, if it was allowed, has worked hard and saved enough money that if he had an opportunity to go to a country, could fund his own immigration. How did I end up meeting him? A year ago and a bit, when I was there. He had been trying. He's been on the list to get into Canada for GIAS for 4.5 years. He's been on other lists as well. And a wonderful woman named Maya, who's a lawyer in Israel, who's originally from Milwaukee before she made Aliyah, who's befriended Berhani and is trying to help him find a place, send out an email to everybody she knows. Rabbi Nadel also made Aliyah from Milwaukee, so he was on her email list. And she mentioned that he'd love to come to Canada, and Rabbi Nadel and I had a meeting the next day as part of the Temple Sinai Yozma interchange project, so he mentioned it to me a year ago. A year ago, there really wasn't a way for him to come because of a number of different challenges. And now, one of the opportunities we have is to form, one of the things I'll be discussing with leadership and with other people as a possibility, is forming what in Canada is called a group of 5, because you don't need to go through the formal organizations. Any 5 Canadians can sponsor someone who's been recognized as a refugee by the United Nations. Maya is in the process right now of getting him formally recognized by the United Nations. I'll tell you more of the story, and you'll be hearing about it as this possibility evolves. I'll tell you what I think, having learned all of his story, not that I told you, having met him, having talked to him. Canada would be lucky to have a man like Berhani here. So many of our families 70 and 80 years ago were in just this kind of a situation. So many families around the world are. There are some families that have the opportunity to come. That I've heard about while I was there. He's actually been waiting longer than most of the people who are currently being processed from Israel to come here. And were we able to bring him, I would be only too proud. And he also would be a great advocate for other Christian churches and the like to bring other people here to give them opportunities and to strengthen our country in a way that it has many other times. He's alone. He has family. Most of them are in Europe. He can't go visit them. He has no family in Eritrea anymore. I know the whole family's been through so many different stories. He was the oldest of 6 siblings, 5 of whom are still alive. Before he had the opportunity to look into going to Europe, he turned 18. His siblings were underage. It was much easier to get into Europe as a refugee if you were underage. He was 18 or older, so he couldn't get in, even though he had family there, and still can't. He would only be too happy again. But I think we'll talk more about it, and I look forward to sharing this information with leadership and discussing it with them. But there's a mitzvah to be done here that's only going to be good for Canada, if you ask me. sideways is not a good thing. So, got to figure out how to fix that before we show this video. I think I will. But before I do, this is a video. So, that's the wrong thing. None of those are a good option. That would be checked out earlier today. I mean, hopefully we can hear it if we can't see it, but it would really help to be able to... oh dear. Maybe that'll help. Come on, give me an option that I can use. Yeah, well, there are lots of tech people here, but that's not why they're here. Anyway, we'll figure it out in a minute. All right, so as I said I was volunteering, what is it that I did? What I did most of the time was, aside from just creating opportunities to interact, I really was a rabbi of the Israel Reform movement, very, very, very part-time, for 3.5 months. The Reform movement has 2 different pre-army leadership training institutes. One 15 years old and one that was new this year in Holon, south of Tel Aviv, where I taught 20 18-year-olds on a regular basis. Teaching them and meeting them was an amazing, profound experience. Only 3 of the 20 grew up connected to the Reform movement. The other are mostly from secular backgrounds and who decided they were ready to commit to spending a year in a Reform movement program, which was an amazing, inspiring thing to know. And it was just phenomenal, again, to meet them. We have to tell more stories that aren't about the news. They had an amazing program in the territories in the West Bank that I'm happy to talk about another time. I don't have time tonight. And so I did a study session for them about the Jewish laws of how you treat enemies, both in warfare and otherwise, because there are lots of interesting Jewish laws about that. And we had a great discussion, and it was interesting. And this one girl who was really involved and really interested was sitting there, you know, kind of with a bored look on her face. So I said, Michal, what's up? And she said, 1 day a year. And I said, what? And she said, this affects me about 1 day a year. And it's interesting, I told that story to a lot of Israelis, and my response to her was, well, next year you're going to be in the IDF. So it might be more than 1 day. Might not, depending on her placement. But a lot of Israelis said, yeah, she's got that about right. That doesn't make Israel's political situation any less important. It does mean that we can't have that be the only story that we tell or the only story that we talk about. I taught them 8 different sessions. I also taught the leadership of the Reform Youth Movement, right? I said they're from the 4 leading youth programs in Israel. Again, I never would have guessed. Where are those? Those are in Modi'in, in just north of Eilat, in the Arava, in the 2 Reform kibbutzim in the south, in a little town outside of Jerusalem called Sur Hadassah, and in a little town outside of Haifa called Yokneam. Again, the Israeli Reform movement is very Israeli. And that's an achievement. That's a wonderful thing to see. It's an important thing to see. And I taught the same things to those 10 leaders who all grew up very active in the Reform movement that I taught to those who grew up in other secular. And the experience was different. They had more of a background. But this is a video that I only wish I could turn the other way, because it was, last I looked at it, it was turned the right direction, but I can't explain it. Anyway, it is a picture of the song session at the Israeli Reform Biennial on a Friday night. Maybe we can all pretend we're at the Seder and lean to the left while we watch it. I don't know. But it's also a reminder of 3 things that happened in Israel at the same time. Okay, it was a fascinating and challenging week in Israel. Okay, I'll tell you the week. I'll tell you one thing, see if you can tell me anything else that happened that week. One thing that happened in the week I'm thinking of was that the American embassy was formally relocated from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. Okay? In that same week, what else happened? Right? Yeah, in Gaza. Well, that is still going on and was going on. Tragic on every side. But the day in which such 62 Gazans lost their lives happened that day. And these three things that I'm referring to were equally present in the Israeli news. What's the third one? The first one was the move of the embassy. The second one was the awful day in Gaza. And the third one, Israel won the Eurovision Song Contest. Okay? Which is this massive European pop song contest. And Netta Barzilai, the now Israeli hero, who won this contest, sang a song called Toy. Now, I'm guessing the numbers are low. How many people here have ever heard this song so far? Now I'll add my hand so that we'll get close to a million, so that's good. Okay, so that's fine. And I have to tell you, she's my hero in regard of this evening thing. This is the last thing we're going to watch, so then I'll stop because there's so much more to tell, but it's late already. Why is it? And she's not a hero to me because she won this contest, although I love the fact that she is who she is, she's proud of who she is, she's amazingly talented, and she's really not willing to be or pretend to be anything but who and what she is in every part of her, which I think is fantastic. But I watched her during one of the 5 times that I turned on the television. No, actually that's not true because I watched a clip of it on my Hebrew language news app on my phone. That's where I saw this. She was being interviewed by the Israeli news. And what happened was on Thursday night she was successful in the semifinals, and then on Saturday night she won the finals. So the interview happened during the day on Friday. So the Israeli news anchor says to Netta Barzilai, he says, good luck. She says, thank you. He says, so we need to know, how difficult is it with all of the BDS people there, making trouble for you and trying to get people to vote against you and creating problems, which I've read about in the Israeli news. And what did Netta say? Netta said, she said, you know what? Today, I've talked to 10 of the largest media organizations in the world. You're the only one who's asked me about that. It's a song competition. Can we talk about the song? It's about the music. It's not about that. Again, while we need to deal with what we need to deal with, we can't only tell those stories. Her victory was not a victory over BDS. It was not a victory about BDS. It was kind of a fun, crazy, European-style song competition that this amazing young Israeli woman won. And the fact that she did is certainly good for Israel and something that the country was enormously proud of. But it's its own story. Okay, now, on Friday night at the song session at the Israeli Reform Biennial, where for a whole Shabbat, from Friday morning until Saturday night, there were 1,500 leaders of Israeli Reform congregations who came together for their conference. I mean, think about that. The North American Biennial is only 3 times that size. Right? And 1,500 of them came together at Kibbutz Shvaim for this, and there was this amazing song session on Friday night. Okay, now the kids jumping up and down like crazy people in this video to this song are the kids that I taught. That's why I'm videoing them, not jumping up and down with them, which I did once, but I'm too old for that. But and the song that's being sung, the tune, is the song Toy. Okay? The words are not the words to the song Toy, which are partially in Hebrew and mostly in English. Okay? So hopefully the sound will work better than the fact that it's sideways. C, feel free to lean to the left. I can't change anything. See if you can recognize the words. Okay, it's about 45 seconds long. Let's see if I can do this. And there should be... If you can, Mitchell, that would be amazing. I just have to find the... Yeah, let's see. What was the song? Adon Olam, because you can sing anything to Adon Olam. Right? I'll be telling a lot more stories and a lot more about what I had the opportunity to do. And there are so many different things to share and talk about that I can't wait to share in person and in writing and everything else. But seriously, the next time that you read an article that makes you say, boy, you know, the next time it seems like, oh my God, it's never going to be better, it's never going to change, are we ever going to get there? And you have those feelings, just think about that video, right? Because these are young Israelis with all the future leaders of the Israeli reform movement. All of whom, about 30 of them, of the ones who were dancing there, if you said to them, hi, I'm from Canada, they would say, oh, from Temple Sinai? So I look forward to working with you to do everything we can to make that possible. These are just a few stories from an amazing 3.5 months in Israel, an amazing 6 months of time to really refresh and renew and consider new ways of looking at things. And it's great to be home, and I look forward to doing and sharing many, many new experiences, stories, and perspectives with you. Thanks for coming.